The buttered girl had at last been pinned down, and was now surrounded by her captors, among some shrubs that grew on the lower terrace. Owain crumbled some bread, then looked up at Kudui again. "So?" "So?" Kudui said slyly. "If I could find a bunch of men who could thin these bastards out a little, it would help. It'll make them look to me for protection, see? And my price will be the tin they're sending to King Mark." "And your price?" He paused to make sure Owain was not shocked by the implication. "Will be half that tin's value." "How much?" Owain asked quickly. The two men were speaking softly, and I had to concentrate to hear their words over the warriors' laughter and cheers. 50 gold pieces a year. Like this," said Kudui, and took a gold ingot the size of a sword handle from a pouch and slid it along the table. "That much?" Even Owain was surprised. "It's a rich place, the moor," Kudui said grimly. "Very rich." Owain stared down Kudui's valley to where the moon's reflection lay on the distant river, as flat and silver as a sword blade. "How many of these miners are there?" he finally asked the prince. "The nearest settlement," Kudui said, "has got 70 or 80 men, and there are a deal of slaves and women, of course." "How many settlements?" 3, but the other 2 are way off. I'm just worried about the one." "Only 20 of us," Owain said cautiously. "Night time?" Kudui suggested. "And they've not been attacked ever, so they won't be keeping watch." Owain sipped wine from his horn. 70 gold pieces, he said flatly. "Not 50. Prince Kudui thought for a second, then nodded his acceptance of the price. Owain grinned. "Why not, eh?" he said. He palmed the gold ingot, then turned fast as a snake to look up at me. I did not move, nor took my eyes from one of the girls who was wrapping her naked body round one of Kudui's tattooed warriors. "Are you awake, Derval?" Owain snapped. I jumped as though startled. "Lord," I said, pretending my mind had been wandering for the last few minutes. "Good lad," Owain said, satisfied I had heard nothing. "Want one of those girls, do you?" I blushed. "No, Lord." Owain laughed. "He's just got himself a pretty little Irish girl," he told Kudui, "so he's staying true to her. But he'll learn. When you get to the other world, boy," he had turned back to me, "you won't regret the men you never killed, but you will regret the women you passed up." He spoke gently. In my first days in his service I had been frightened of him, but for some reason Owain liked me and treated me well. Now he looked back at Kudui. "Tomorrow night," he said softly. "Tomorrow night." I had gone from Merlin's tour to Owain's band, and it was like leaping from this world to the next. I stared at the moon and thought of Gunlius's long-haired men massacring the guards on the tour, and I thought of the people on the moor who would face the same savagery the very next night, and I knew I could do nothing to stop it, even though I knew it should be stopped. But fate, as Merlin always taught us, is inexorable. Life is a jest of the gods, Merlin liked to claim, and there is no justice. You must learn to laugh, he once told me, or else you'll just weep yourself to death. Our shields had been smeared with boat-builders' pitch, so they would look like the black shields of Oengus Mac Irem's Irish raiders, whose long, sharp-prowed boats raided Dumnonia's northern coast. A local guide with tattooed cheeks led us all afternoon through deep, lush valleys that climbed slowly towards the great bleak loom of the moor that was occasionally visible through some break in the heavy trees. It was good woodland, full of deer and cut with fast, cold streams running seaward off the moor's high plateau. By nightfall, we were on the moor's edge, and after dark we followed a goat track up to the heights. It was a mysterious place. The old people had lived here, and left their sacred stone circles in its valleys, while the peaks were crowned with jumbled masses of grey rock, and the low places were filled with treacherous swamps, through which our guide led us unerringly. Owain had told us that the people of the moor were in rebellion against King Mordred, and that their religion had taught them to fear men with black shields. It was a good tale, and I might have believed it had I not eavesdropped on his conversation with Prince Gudui the night before. Owain had also promised us gold if we did our task properly, then warned us that this night's killing would have to stay secret, for we had no orders from the council to mete out this punishment. Deep in the thick woods, on our way to the moor, we had come to an old shrine built beneath a grove of oaks, and Owain had made us each swear the death oath of secrecy in front of the moss-grown skulls that were lodged in niches of the shrine's wall. Britain was full of such ancient hidden shrines, evidence of how widespread the Druids had been before the Romans came, where country folk still came to seek the gods' help. And that afternoon, under the great lichen-hung oaks, we had knelt before the skulls and touched the hilt of Owain's sword, and those men who were initiates in the secrets of Mithras had received Owain's kiss. Then, thus blessed by the gods and sworn to the killing, we moved on towards the night. It was a filthy place we came to. Great smelting fires spewed sparks and smoke towards the heavens. A sprawl of huts lay between the fires and around the gaping black moors that showed where men delved into the earth. Huge mounds of charcoal looked like black tors, while the valley smelt like no other I had ever seen. Indeed, to my heated imagination, that upland mining village seemed more like Anowin's realm, the other world, than any human settlement. Dogs barked as we approached, but no one in the settlement took any notice of their noise. There was no fence, not even an earth bank to protect the place. Ponies were picketed close to rows of carts, and they began to whinny as we edged down the valley's side. But still no one came out of the low huts to find the cause of the unrest. The huts were circles made of stone and roofed with turf, but in the settlement's centre was a pair of old Roman buildings, square, tall, and solid. 2 men apiece, if not more, Owain hissed at us, reminding us how many men we were each expected to kill. And I'm not counting slaves or women. Go fast, kill fast, and always watch your backs, and stay together. We divided into 2 groups. I was with Owain, whose beard glinted from the fire that reflected off his iron warrior rings. The dogs barked, the ponies whinnied. Then at last a cockerel crowed, and a man crawled from a hut to discover what had disturbed the livestock. But it was already too late. The killing had begun. I saw many such killings. In Saxon villages we would have burned the huts before we began the slaughter, but these crude stone and turf circles would not take the fire, and so we were forced to go inside with spears and swords. We snatched burning wood from a nearby fire and hurled it inside the huts before entering, so that the interior would be light enough for the killing. And sometimes the flames were enough to drive the inhabitants out to where the waiting swords chopped down like butchers' axes. If the fire did not drive the family out, then Owain would order 2 of us to go inside while the others stood guard outside. I dreaded my turn, but knew it would come, and knew too that I dared not disobey the command. I was oath-bound to this bloody work, and to refuse it would have been my death warrant. The screaming began. The first few huts were easy enough, for the people were asleep or only just waking. But as we moved deeper into the settlement, the resistance became fiercer. 2 men attacked us with axes, and were cut down with contemptuous ease by our spearmen. Women fled with children in their arms. A dog leapt at Owain and died whimpering with its spine broken. I watched a woman run with a baby in one arm and holding a bleeding child's hand with the other, and I suddenly remembered Tannibur's parting shout that my mother still lived. I shuddered as I realized that the old druid must have laid a curse on me when I had threatened his life, and though my good fortune was holding the curse at bay, I could feel its malevolence circling me like a hidden dark enemy. I touched the scar on my left hand and prayed to Bel that Tannibur's curse would be defeated. "Derval! Licker! That hut!" Owain shouted, and like a good soldier I obeyed my orders. I dropped my shield, flung a firebrand through the door, then crouched double to get through the tiny entrance. Children screamed as I entered, and a half-naked man leapt at me with a knife that forced me to twist desperately aside. I fell on a child as I lunged at her father with my spear. The blade slid off the man's ribs, and he would have landed on top of me and stabbed the knife down through my throat if Licat had not killed him. The man doubled over, clasping his belly. Then he gasped as Licat wrenched the spearhead free and drew his own knife to begin killing the screaming children. I ducked back outside, blood on my spearhead, to tell Owain there had only been the one man inside. "Come on!" Owain shouted. "Demetia! Demetia!" That was our war cry of the night, the name of Oengus mac Iram's Irish kingdom to the west of Siluria. The huts were all empty now, and we began hunting miners down in the dark spaces of the settlement. Fugitives were running everywhere, but some men stayed behind and tried to fight us. One brave group even formed a crude battle line and attacked us with spears, picks, and axes. But Owain's men met the crude charge with a terrible efficiency, letting their black shields soak up the impact, then using their spears and swords to cut down their attackers. I was one of those efficient men. May God forgive me, but I killed my second man that night, and perhaps a third too. The first I speared in the throat, the second in the groin. I did not use my sword, for I did not think Howl's blade a fit instrument for that night's purpose. It ended quickly enough. The settlement was suddenly empty of all but the dead, the dying, and a few men, women, and children trying to hide. We killed all we found. We killed their animals. We burned the carts they used to fetch the charcoal up from the valleys. We stove in the turf roofs of their huts. We trampled their vegetable gardens, and then we ransacked the settlement for treasure. A few arrows flickered down from the skyline, but none of us was hit. There was a tub of Roman coins, gold ingots, and silver bars in their chief's hut. It was the biggest hut, full 20 feet across, and inside the hut the light of our firebrand showed the dead chief sprawling with a yellowish face and a slit belly. One of his women and 2 of his children lay dead in his blood. A third child, a girl, lay under a blood-soaked pelt, and I thought I saw her hand twitch when one of our men stumbled on her body. But I pretended she was dead, and left her alone. Another child screamed in the night, as her hiding place was found, and a sword hacked down. God forgive me. God and his angels forgive me. But I only ever confessed that night's sin to one person, and she was not a priest and had no power to grant me Christ's absolution. In purgatory, or maybe hell, I know, I will meet those dead children. Their fathers and mothers will be given my soul for their plaything, and I shall deserve the punishment.